That's why
Y'all
it's
go to
so,
lunch for that one.
that's so imperative. That's
Go to lunch and
why it's so
we'll-
imperative to
I'll
have
come for the
discussion in
word.
Bible study.
2, 1. Here we go. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday night Bible study class. We are running considerably late tonight. I apologize to Facebook people. We had a good discussion, which I'll encapsulate here in a few minutes. Then we started talking about 501c3s. So, but anyway, tonight what we're going to do is we're going to go over some not bookkeeping, but kind of housekeeping things. Then we're going to talk about Psalm 91. Now, for those of you that were with us the last time we met, Psalm 90 was kind of a psalm about death and God not showing up, and it was kind of a depressing psalm. But just for the same reason that was a psalm of death, this Psalm 91 can be called a psalm of life. So this is also, it's also known as a messianic psalm. Does anybody know what that term messianic means? When we're talking about a messianic psalm, what does that mean? Well, what does the word messianic sound like?
Messiah.
Messiah. So a messianic psalm would be a psalm about the Messiah. And who's the Messiah?
Jesus.
Jesus. And the reason they call it a messianic psalm is because, remember, this is Old Testament. Jesus hasn't come yet. But whenever there's a psalm or a prophet or a part in the Old Testament that refers or looks forward to Jesus, it's referred to as messianic. So as we go through, we're going to see that the message in here is for us, for here and for now and for today. But it's also a look forward for the Jews as to what the Messiah should look like. Now, before we get started, I want to do a couple of things, go over my announcements. We're meeting here at the Harvard Park Baptist Church and Community Center. I want to talk about one of their ministries called Blessing Closet. It meets every Friday from 11 to 1. They'll even come pick you up in their van. And you come in, they give you a free meal. And when it's over, you get up to 3 outfits for free. And they're not garbage. They're nice stuff. I've seen them. But that's every Friday from 11 to 1. Grab a pen because I'm going to give you a phone number to call. If you're interested, call them and see where their nearest pickup point is or how they can come and get you or where they're located. It's 947-252-2565. Leave a voicemail and they'll get back to you if they don't answer. 947-252-2565. Also, WorldSpan Tutoring Service specializes in helping tutor kids in kindergarten through 4th in math and reading. And keep your pen because I got another phone number for you to call, or you can text. It's you can call Mickey Shell. It's 217-761-5535. We'll call them and text, leave your information, and they will get back to you. The teacher is a good Christian person and has years of experience that will do good for your kids. 217-761-5535. Okay. So announcements are done. Now let's talk about what we talked about. This time, instead of doing a talk during dinner, what I did is I put a question out there and wanted the class to discuss it among themselves about what and what we talked about was, hi David, can a person be saved before the age of majority? And you asked what the age of majority is. Well, I think that's different for every person. And that's why you use that term instead of 18 or 21 or... And I think we agreed. At first it seemed like we were disagreeing. And then when I sat back and listened to them talk, I realized they're both right. One person was saying, I don't believe kids would go to hell, to which I would agree. And the other person was saying, a person can't get saved until the age of majority, and that varies by individual. And that's true too. So how do you justify that? And that's how the discussion went. And we pretty much came up with what I have thought, and it sounds very simple, but I've spent years thinking about this. And I believe that from conception, or actually before conception, all the way through the age of majority, God's got your back. If you die when you're 2 years old, you're going to heaven because God's got you. He created you, and you're not old enough to make a conscious decision, so you're going to heaven. And that includes not only kids, but what about the mentally infirmed? What about the people that will live to be 80 but never have the ability to make that choice? Is it fair to send them to hell? So that's what the age of majority is. Some people never achieve it. Some people achieve it early. But I think they all have to be able to consciously accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and understand the difference between life and death, and the difference between physical life and spiritual life, physical death and spiritual death. And the example that I gave was, if a 5-year-old loses a parent, and you have ever tried to explain physical death, there is no possible way they grasp that concept. From the smartest to the dumbest. I've never seen a 5-year-old be able to accept and fully understand it. So if they can't accept that, then how in the world can they possibly make an informed decision about life and death and being saved? So anyway, that's what we talked about. Hi, Neil. So that was what our talk was before, while we were eating. Okay, so now last time we talked about Psalm 90. Remember I told you Psalm 90 was one of those psalms where it was all about death and destruction and God didn't show up. Well, the very next psalm, this one, can be called a psalm of life. Also, it's also referred to as a messianic psalm. And as we go through here, we're going to see that, and I've used this to describe these messianic psalms before. I want you to picture two stories going side by side. The words are exactly the same. Okay, it's like a split TV screen. And on one side would be the physical part, and on the other side will be the spiritual part. Okay, so when we go through here, I'm going to try to go, I'll be jumping back and forth so that you can see the difference and yet see the parallel. This is a beautiful psalm. And by the way, this psalm is most famously known as the psalm that Satan misquotes to Jesus to try to get him to go outside the Father's will. And when we get there, I'll show you that.
Is
Yeah.
that when he was in the desert?
Yes.
For 40?
40, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Satan tries to get him to jump off the building, and he uses one of these verses in here to convince him to do that.
Wants him to be Superman.
All right. So who wants to read verse 1? Anybody?
He that dwelt in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty.
Stop. Okay, one sentence. Let's unpack this, because this is huge. If you don't get this concept here, the rest of it doesn't make sense. Let's start at the back and go backwards. Okay. Now let's go to the front. So he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. Who's the Most High?
God.
God, the Father. So if it's he who dwells in the secret place, where's the secret place?
Heaven. No.
And who is he who dwells in thee?
Shadow.
No.
He who dwells where?
Remember, we have the parallel stories. He who dwells in the secret place, and let me reword it so that you can get the picture. He who dwells in the secret place of God. So who is he?
Jesus.
Yes. So right out of the chute. Now, remember I told you we got two stories going here. Okay? So here's the spiritual side. Jesus, who dwells in the secret place of God. But now what about the person who gets saved? He. Well, you and me. If we dwell in the secret place of the Most High, to us, Jesus, he's the one that's died for us. Now remember, the order that God puts things in. God, Jesus, man, woman, child. That's the order. So what he's saying here is, Jesus, who dwells in the most place high with God, or man who dwells in the secret place of Jesus. Same words, two different parallel meanings. One physical, one spiritual. Shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Now what does that mean? Abide under the shadow.
Be
Nope.
protected by God.
Yes.
He keeps us under the shadow of his almighty wings.
Yes. You read that.
No, I knew that. I've read this
I will-
Psalm 91 before.
I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him I will trust.
We used to sing that song.
What is my refuge and my fortress? What is a refuge and a fortress?
A place you go to, a
safe
strong
place.
tower.
Safe place, yeah.
The refuge is a safe place, and what's the fortress?
Whatever that wall or protection from your enemy is, a fortress.
So what is the refuge and for? Now remember the two stories, we got a spiritual and a physical. The physical is the wall, and the refuge is the army or whoever's protecting it. What's the spiritual?
The
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, the Lord.
The
himself.
refuge and my fortress.
It's
So
never
if it's for a man, his refuge would be Jesus. That's how he's going to be saved. And the fortress is God. And he goes on to confirm it in the last line here. He says, my God, in him I will trust.
Yeah, we should sing this as a song.
What's a prerequisite to be saved?
No prerequisite, just accept the Lord. Jesus Christ as your Savior.
You have to believe in your heart and confess with your mouth, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is he saying here? In him I will trust. So if you believe in your heart, you trust. Can you see how these stories are going together? One is about Jesus and one is about the psalmist. So a person who gives this just a cursory reading, what he's going to get out of this is that if he loves God, he's going to be protected. There'll be an army to protect him, and it's all about love, and all he's going to see is the physical. When in reality, boy, if somebody ever figures out how to get rid of these, please tell me. Hi, Dennis. Okay. Verse 3. Who's next? Or same, you can go ahead.
Number 3.
Yep.
Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler.
Okay, stop. What is a fowler?
It's a hunter.
Hunter of birds, specifically.
Yeah, birds, yeah.
But now, again, that's the physical. In this verse, spiritually, the question is, who is the fowler?
Satan.
Correct. So he's saying, he shall deliver you from Satan.
From the snare of the fowler. Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
he tried
Okay,
to set
go
us
ahead.
up.
Go ahead and finish that verse.
And from the noisome pestilence.
Perilous pestilence. Okay,
Pestilence.
stop. What is a perilous pestilence?
Anything that will come against us to aggravate or to buffet us?
Pestilence means
We know-
sickness and disease.
is what I was gonna say.
So what he's saying is, he's going to protect you from Satan, which means not only spiritually, but all the sicknesses and illnesses and everything else. He's going to protect you from that.
Anything that's abroad, anything,
Mhm.
whatever the pestilence may be. The noisome pestilence. Anything that comes annoy us, noisome pestilence.
Okay, verse 4.
He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wing shalt thou trust.
Okay, stop. Do you see the picture he's painting here?
Mm-hmm.
How many of you have ever been on a farm?
Chickens.
I think so.
And if you've never been on a farm, if you watch video of like eagles and hawks when they raise their babies, the mama sits in the thing and spreads her wings and the babies get underneath there. That's the picture he's painting here.
Yes.
So do chickens.
Yep. Put yourself under my wings and I will protect you.
Eagle wings. Okay,
Go ahead.
He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler.
Keep going.
Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day.
Okay. I'm going to tell you a story. And it never really occurred to me. I've told you the story all about the guy that was trying to get me fired and got in my face and yelled and screamed. There was another one that I was thinking about today when I was reading this. I had forgotten all about this. But in my apartment building, there was a guy that lived underneath me of color who thought he was a real tough guy. He was 20-some years old. You know, he had the saggy pants and the long dreads and a piece of work. And he was causing me a lot of problems. And we finally issued him a note to get out. So one day, my ex-wife pulls up, and I'm leaning inside the car, talking to her, and he gets right in the front of the car and starts yelling at me in front of my daughter and my ex-wife. And he says, "So am I going to be getting any more letters from the office?" And I looked up at him and I said, "You haven't gotten any lately, have you?" And his eyes got real big. And he just shook his head and turned around and walked away. And I didn't think anything about it. And I leaned back in to talk to my ex-wife, and her eyes were big.
She saw something.
And she said, "Wow, you really aren't afraid of anything, are you?" And I thought about that, and I thought, no, I am afraid of a lot of things. But for some reason at that point, there was, and it's happened a lot, like with that one guy. When it's right and it's of God,
Right.
there's just no fear. But the last story I told you guys about the house, and I called that guy a name, remember?
I don't remember.
Well, anyway, I called this guy a really bad name, and he said, "Come across this line and I'm going to
yeah,
do
you
it."
did say that.
And so I came across the line and I was looking down at him like this, right? And he said, "Go ahead, say it again." And I heard a voice very plain and very
So you
clear
got
in my
that.
ear. And it said, "Brian, you're going to have to take this one because what you called him wasn't very nice."
Mm.
And as soon as I heard that, I went, "I'm out." I didn't want to take it, and I deserved it. But the difference is when it's God bound and you're in the will of God, there is no fear, and you don't realize it,
Yeah.
because if you thought about it, you'd be like, okay, that was dumb. But then when you're outside and you realize that you're outside of the will of God and you're about to take a whooping, all of a sudden there's fear.
Or when you walk away from something, you know you should have stood your ground. The gall is so bitter in your belly you can't stand.
Yeah, the physical part of me really wanted to thump
Oh,
the,
that's where I've been.
because he's so small. He weighs 120 pounds. I know, soaking wet. And he could have hit me with everything he's got, and I would have gone, okay, now it's my turn. But I just realized as soon as I heard that in my ear, I wasn't in the will of God, and I didn't. So I would rather be humiliated and in God's will than not humiliated and out of God's will.
Right, be obedient.
So, but anyway, but here's where he's talking about fear. And don't be afraid by the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by the day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness. What's the pestilence that walks in darkness?
I think he's talking spiritual, he's talking about Satan again.
Yes, that's exactly right. Nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. This is all talking about protection.
Yes.
That God is going to protect you in all these different ways. Yeah.
I'll wait till we get to that scripture. I mean the verse down here.
You're reading ahead again, aren't you?
No, this is one I use a lot for protection.
Is it?
Yes. And I
Okay.
pray, and I tell my little nieces and nieces to pray this. I can't hold it. Can I say it?
Sure.
Psalms 91:11 is the scripture that I use for protection. For he will command his angels to take charge. And my niece said, I won't forget it because that's 911, the police number.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool.
That was so cool. Many years I've said that and I never put it together. But it took this young girl to say, I won't forget to pray that because that's the number we call for the police.
And that's the verse that Satan
Nine.
Out of the mouths of babes.
But
Right.
it says, for he will command his angels to take charge over thee. And that's the one I tell. I said, pray when you're leaving in your car, when you're going places, pray Psalms 91:11. For he will command his angels to take charge over you.
Nice.
And she said, I won't forget it because that's 911. I said, wow, I've never thought of it like
Yeah.
that all these years.
9111.
Yes. 911.
911.
All right.
9111.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
Verse 7.
who's reading?
1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, and it will not come near you.
Okay. So if 1,000 would fall at one side and 10,000 at the other side, who are we talking about here?
Our enemies. Anything that comes against us. It could be that many against us, but he will not let them harm us.
Okay, from the physical part of the story, that's correct. But how many people can have 10,000 fall by their right side?
Well, he's talking about armies and things that would come against his people, biblical stuff. But he's just letting know, I think it's to let us know no matter how big or how bad or how much we're outnumbered, it means nothing to God.
Well, that's accurate. But what spiritually what we're talking about here is Jesus.
Well, you know what I'm saying? I'm using Jesus and God.
I think David might even be reflecting back on his triumphal entry.
Well, when you look at what he's talking about here is when Jesus is physically on the earth, and he's saying all of these things are going to go on around you. People are going to die. There's going to be sickness, and people are going to be out to get you, but it shall not come near you. How many times in the Bible do we read in the New Testament where it says, "But my time has not come yet"? And he walks through the whole crowd. Like when he goes back and he preaches and they come after him for blasphemy and he just walks away. This is what they're talking about. No matter what goes on around you, nothing's going to touch you because I got you. Verse 8. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked, because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. He's restating what he said earlier. The Most High is a dwelling place. And again, it's talking about Jesus. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. Now that can be physical and it can be spiritual. Whereas a spiritual dwelling place where no plague can come near you.
Had to be heaven.
That's right. Which brings up a kind of an oxymoron in my mind that I've never been able to figure out. God kicked Lucifer and 1/3 of the angels out of heaven for sin, correct?
2/3.
Jesus had to die on the cross because God cannot be around sin, correct? In the book of Job, Satan goes to heaven.
The sons of God.
But still sin.
Because he was a fallen angel and God allowed it.
I could see God going to a neutral third place and meeting the sons of God. But why was Satan allowed into heaven?
Some people believe there are different levels of heaven.
Well, there are
Yeah.
3 different, that's true.
So maybe it wasn't the heavenly place we're going to inherit. Maybe it's another heaven place, you know.
I don't think I considered that. I'll have to think about
Yeah.
that. That makes sense.
Instead of the atmosphere that was in
Right.
the stratosphere.
Right, he may not be in that holy of holy places that we're going to go.
That's why I've always thought when I read that.
I didn't
Job's
think.
quite a fascinating book, actually.
I know,
Mhm.
I know.
It's almost
Oh.
half an hour.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.